Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. When it comes to sports conversations, or when it comes to conversations in general, there always may be a lot of hypothetical conversations. And I've never been a person overall, at least when I've gotten into my more logical phase, I've never been a person overall that has really been a huge fan or a huge supporter of the hypothetical representation. And the reason why that is because whenever people usually bring up hypotheticals, like if we were to bring up Michael Jordan versus LeBron James or Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady, one thing I always notice about those fan bases is that they always bring up the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Well, if Aaron Rodgers, if he would have had Bill Belichick, well, Michael Jordan, if he would have been on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and LeBron James had he been with Scottie Pippen, all that is great if you want to try to make up these hypothetical arguments, but at the end of the day, they didn't happen. And that all in all is basically what I deal with. I think that shoulda, coulda, woulda arguments, I think that sometimes they make for an interesting argument. I think sometimes they make for an interesting discussion. But when you talk about a factual discussion, when you talk about a logical and objective discussion, you can never deal in hypotheticals. For example, like I said, if we're trying to debate who all in all is the greater quarterback between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and you come at me and you try to say that, well, Aaron Rodgers, he may have been greater than Tom Brady had he had Bill Belichick and this guy and this guy and this guy and all this sort of shit. Well, basically what that tells me is that, excuse me, you don't really have much more of an argument than that. And that's what I notice with a lot of these LeBron James fans and Aaron Rodgers fans, especially whenever they try to debate that their favorite player is the greatest of all time in their sport, they always bring up a bunch of hypotheticals. And if your main argument is nothing but a hypothetical, you don't have any argument, you don't have any debate, because that is not reality. Reality is not shoulda, coulda, woulda, at least not in my opinion. I understand that certain things, had they been different, who knows, maybe they would have transpired differently, but we can never know that. We can never know that. And sports is so unpredictable when it comes down to it that we can try to allege that this could have happened. I can try to allege that Aaron Rodgers would be the greatest quarterback of all time had he had Bill Belichick and Tom Brady not had Bill Belichick. I can try to allege that all I want to. I can try to allege that had Michael Jordan and LeBron James, had they been switched in the 90s, that maybe Michael Jordan, that maybe he'd be, not even within the top five of all time or something like that. I can try to allege this all I want to, but at the end of the day, there's no proof for that. You have no hardcore evidence. And that's it at the end of the day. And the Deontay Wilder fans, they also deal with a lot of hypotheticals, which is why they got this fight prediction so wrong. Because Deontay Wilder, he was going to have to do so much in order to beat Tyson Fury. And what they were basically saying is, well, if Deontay Wilder, if he fixes this, if he fixes this, if he fixes this. And it just wasn't in reality. Deontay Wilder, he's a great athlete, but he's not a person all in all that is an all-around great fighter. Don't get me wrong, I think he'll make the Hall of Fame in terms of boxing, and I think he will be remembered as a decently great fighter, depending on where his career goes from here. I need to see him against some of the other top competitors as well. But when it comes down to it, the hypothetical question for today is Deontay Wilder. What would have happened had he trained with Floyd Mayweather Jr.? Now, in my opinion, I think Floyd Mayweather Jr., I think all in all that he would have been a great help to Deontay Wilder. But Deontay Wilder is just one of those guys to where I think that he could be trained by almost anybody. And I'm not going to necessarily call him a lost cause. He's very talented in certain areas. But Deontay Wilder is just a dude that is so, so limited. And Fury, all in all, Fury is just a dude that not only has Wilder's number, but Fury is just the perfect kind of fighter that you want to try to really slay the beast when it comes to a fighter like Deontay Wilder. Tyson Fury is to Deontay Wilder what Muhammad Ali was to George Foreman. And we're going to talk about this conversation here because I think that it's a very interesting conversation. And if I had to guess, because we're going to review a video by Dante's Boxing Nation, if I had to guess, Dante is probably going to say that had Deontay Wilder trained with Floyd Mayweather Jr., there was no chance that Tyson Fury would have won the fight. If I had to guess, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what he has to say.
Only thing he need is the basic fundamentals, and I could do the rest. I can help him. I can really help him. All he got to do is, Deontay Wilder is with us anyway. He's with Al Heyman anyway.
Right. So why would because you skip Floyd? Here's the thing. I mean, I look at Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt turned into a great trainer. There's some Virgil Hill. I mean, there's some guys that fought that were good fight that were great fighters in their day and time in their weight class. You're arguably the best. You're one of the top 2 or 3 fighters. I mean, someone said you're the first or second best fighter of the 21st century. Why wouldn't guys come to try to pick your brain, get that knowledge from Floyd Mayweather? Why?
I'm here to help.
I believe that was Shannon Sharp speaking. It sounded exactly like him. If that wasn't him, then I'm not sure. But Shannon basically asked a very good question. He said, well, you're one of the top boxers of all time, and you are debatably the best and the greatest of the 21st century. In my opinion, he would be as well. Either him or Manny Pacquiao. But I would rank Floyd over Manny Pacquiao in my personal opinion. But when it comes down to it overall, I think that it's a very easy question to answer. Why certain people, especially someone as prideful as Deontay Wilder, would not want the help of Floyd Mayweather Jr. First of all, Floyd Mayweather Jr., he bet against Deontay Wilder in a couple of his fights, and I don't think that it was anything personal. I don't think Floyd Mayweather Jr. has ever had a personal agenda or not like Deontay Wilder personally. I do think that their personalities are quite different, but when it comes down to the overall, I don't think Floyd has ever taken, anything personal against Deontay Wilder. But Deontay Wilder is a very, very prideful person, and what some people may not understand about very competitive athletes, but, just people in general sometimes as well. Sometimes all in all, certain people will say just the fact overall that they did it by themselves and that they got help from nobody else, they would rather overall stand on top of that hill or stand on top of that mountaintop and say that I did this all by myself, even if it was a much harder route when it came down to it than someone saying, well, I did this all in all, not only because of my own will, but also I have to give a great amount of credit to this person as well because they helped me out. Sometimes you're going to offer help to some people and, they're going to say, nah, what, I'm good. Even if it seems very illogical, even if it seems, not necessarily right, but certain people are just like that. And I get it to a certain degree. I'm a person all in all to where I also prefer to learn things by myself, at least when it comes to things that I'm very passionate about or things that I think that I need to really get past on my own. Especially, my competitive side. If I'm in a competitive side, I'm also a person that does not usually like to take help from a lot of people. And sometimes that can be a very, very big issue because you can always learn something from anybody, even if you think that person has nothing to teach you necessarily. I think that almost everyone can teach you something, whether you can learn something positive or negative about it. But, it is what it is. But when it came down to it, there was no way that Deontay Wilder was ever going to accept the help of Floyd Mayweather Jr. He's just way too prideful. And Deontay Wilder, if he was going to win this third fight against Tyson Fury, he was going to do it his own way. And he was going to make sure that Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s name was not attached to it. Now, some people overall may say, well, why do you think he wasn't anywhere near as prideful as Malik Scott overall and Mark Breland? Easy, because I don't think Deontay Wilder looks at those fighters and says, all in all, that, those guys are above me. I think Deontay Wilder takes a look at those guys and he says, I'm greater than you guys ever were. So he basically says that, sure, these guys are helping me, but all in all, when it came down to it, I'm much greater at my job than possibly what they ever were in professional boxing as well. If you take it from an all-time great like a Floyd Mayweather Jr., I think Deontay Wilder, I think that all in all, he would have never had the same amount of pride or overall never had the same amount of confidence heading into the fight, and it always would have been a distraction to him in the back of his mind. So all in all, some people, they may say, well, Deontay, he should have taken the Floyd Mayweather Jr. help. He should have taken the advice. Well, Deontay Wilder, he's just not one of those people that want to take advice from others, at least from certain people. And Floyd Mayweather Jr., he does not want to take advice from him. So it is what it is because he's very competitive. And on top of that, he's looking at him and basically saying, I think a part of him wants to say that I want to be greater than Floyd Mayweather Jr. and I want to do things my own way. And I'm not going to take his help even if it kills me. But it is what it is. Anyway.
Fighters. So even like Deontay Wilder, I'm here. All he got to do is let me know. Let me know what he want to do, and we can make it happen.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So finally, Floyd Mayweather has given his thoughts on the Deontay Wilder versus Fury fight, or the Fury versus Wilder fight. I played that clip to get you guys caught up. For those of you guys who didn't know that Floyd Mayweather, he reached out to Deontay Wilder before this fight. He offered his services. Deontay Wilder, he declined. Not only did he decline, but he basically dissed Floyd Mayweather. So I knew that this was coming, some type of response from Floyd Mayweather after watching Deontay Wilder get knocked out by Tyson Fury. So Floyd Mayweather, he took to his Instagram, and this is what he posted. He says, please hit the follow button if you want to follow a humble student, teacher, mentor, and coach in the sport of boxing. He has all the credentials and qualifications to support why I recognize him as an elite boxing coach, something that nowadays many unqualified people claim to be. Okay, guys, so clearly the implication right there is Malik Scott is not on the level of a Mark Breland. And it sounds like Floyd Mayweather obviously feels like Deontay Wilder made a big mistake by firing Mark and bringing in Malik.
What I'm going to say is this. Deontay Wilder can do whatever he wants to do. I did not necessarily have a problem with him firing Mark Breland, because if you think you need to make an adjustment, that's your business. I personally think that Deontay Wilder, the way that you got your ass kicked, the only way that I've seen fighters improve after an ass whooping like that was when they completely changed their corner. And Deontay Wilder, he still had JD's in his corner. He still had a couple of other people there. I don't think the Malik Scott hiring was necessarily a bad idea. Do I think that he could have possibly learned more from Floyd Mayweather Jr.? Yes, I do. But once again, Deontay, he was never going to take that route. So it is what it is.
Let me first say this. Now, before this fight, I told you how I thought it was a big mistake for Deontay Wilder not to hire Floyd Mayweather to be his trainer, because there are just some simple things that Floyd Mayweather, he could have taught Deontay Wilder. And even if Wilder could have only learned 20% of what Floyd was teaching him, that would have been enough to beat Tyson Fury.
You see what I said? I knew exactly what Dante was going to say. Now, do I believe that had Deontay Wilder, do I believe that had he trained with Floyd Mayweather Jr., that he beat Tyson Fury? You know, you never know, but in my opinion, though, Deontay Wilder is just a person that he's just very limited as a fighter. He's a great athlete, like I said, and he can do certain things because, you know, he's 6'7", has a great right hand, and on top of that, you know, he has an 83-inch reach. But that shit ain't gonna work against an elite boxer, you know, who has great heart and great stamina and is almost more gifted than you in almost every other area besides natural, you know, right hand power. Tyson Fury is more gifted than Deontay Wilder in every other way besides natural punching power. And it's you know, that's why I say when you really take a look at their skill sets, it's not even close.
Because if Deontay Wilder was able to make this fight as competitive as it was, and he was out on his feet pretty much the whole fight.
Here goes this bullshit that a lot of the LDBC and new media are trying to push. Oh, Deontay, he was out on his feet the whole entire time and he still made the fight competitive. You think that someone is going to be out on their feet the whole entire time and knock Tyson Fury down in the 4th round? It's not that he's out on his feet. He just has very bad feet. He has very bad balance. But the thing is about Deontay Wilder is that he really did not start to lose a whole lot of gas until about the 7th round. Don't worry, his gas was slowly dwindling away because he's never had a good gas tank. And on top of that, the 10 pounds of extra muscle certainly didn't help you. But when it came down to it, Deontay, you know, when it comes down to it, his stamina was somewhat there until about the 7th round. That's when I really started to notice, okay, he's starting to go out of there.
While he was making it competitive, he was out on his feet and wasn't using any of the tools that he worked on in camp. So this is why I feel.
And you know, certain people also may ask the question, they may ask me the question, well, do you think had Deontay Wilder trained with Floyd Mayweather Jr., do you think that he would have taught him certain things to defeat Tyson Fury? Who knows? Maybe. But I'm a person that believes in this. If you're a person that overall does something very, very well and you know that you cannot beat your opponent in this certain area, when it comes down to it, you got to try to outsmart them, or sometimes you got to try to do what you're best at. And Deontay Wilder, he's never going to be able to fight on the back foot against Tyson Fury. He's just not going to be able to do it. The only way that Deontay Wilder was going to beat Tyson Fury is if he caught him with the right hand and Tyson Fury got stupid, which almost happened in the 4th round. But when it came down to the all in all, or if he was able to pressure him and get Tyson Fury to back up and then land something with the right hand, neither of those things were usually able to happen. So it is what it is. You know, once again, certain people, they may ask, well, Do you think that had Floyd Mayweather Jr. trained Deontay Wilder that, he would have been much more prepared? Well, let me ask you this question. If Floyd Mayweather Jr. trained George Foreman to try and outbox Muhammad Ali and be more slicker than him, or all in all, try to land certain punches or, learn better fundamentals, do you still think that George Foreman would outbox Muhammad Ali just because that happened? Or would you advise George Foreman, you know what, you're not going to be able to outbox Muhammad Ali because you don't have those tendencies. You're a brawler. And if you're going to, fight a boxer, you're not going to outbox them. You have to brawl them. If you don't have those tendencies, if you don't have the boxing ability. Now, Floyd Mayweather Jr., he can try to outbox even the best of boxers because he has a great technical skill set. He can fight going backwards. He can fight going forwards. He can fight a multitude of ways. The best and the greatest of fighters can do that. Deontay Wilder can fight one way. That is it.
Once again, 20% would have made a huge difference in this fight. But now, after what I've seen, now I'm starting to believe it's not about the trainer. It didn't matter if the trainer was Mark Breland, if it was Floyd Mayweather, or it was Malik Scott. Just like Deontay Wilder said, and I agree with him, right before the fight, he always said, Malik didn't teach me anything. As Wilder put it, Malik didn't give me any new tools. He just brought me my own toolbox, opened it up, and showed me which tools to use. And after using...
And you showed that you had absolutely no extra tools. No extra tools. Deontay Wilder does not have a very large toolbox. He has a jab that he can use against lesser fighters, and of course he has that mega right hand. But if you get past those two things, he's completely lost.
All those tools and training, for whatever reason,
Tyson Fury, when you take a look at his toolbox compared to some other heavyweights is so expansive. He has great head movement, he has great feet, an excellent jab, an excellent left hook, an excellent right hand right down the pipe. He can fight very good on the inside. He can fight good going forward. He can fight good going backwards. All right, he's very, very good. He's very good in almost every category. On top of that, he can punch. And he has good hand speed. There was just nothing that Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, was ever going to be able to do against a fighter like Tyson Fury.
Those tools went straight out the window when Deontay Wilder got in the ring with Tyson Fury, or at least after the second round. First two rounds, Deontay Wilder, he looked like a complete new fighter. All of a sudden, the third round comes. I believe he gets hit to the eardrum again, and everything.
People keep bringing up this eardrum bullshit. Deontay Wilder never had a busted eardrum. Once again, people that take a look at Deontay Wilder and say, "Oh, then the third round, all of a sudden he just threw everything out the window." The reason why Deontay Wilder, don't get it wrong, he was trying to go to the body. It's not like Deontay Wilder abandoned everything and just jumped ship. Deontay Wilder tried. He couldn't do it because Tyson Fury, and I said this in my video, as soon as he jabs that right hand, as soon as he jabs his main hand, gets that jab off, and throws it down the pipe, Deontay, overall, he's going to realize that he can't out-jab this dude, and all in all, he's going to revert back to his old ways when it came down to it. He tried to hit to the body. He tried to do the new things, but he just couldn't do it because he realized very quickly, and I said this, that all in all, he can't outbox Tyson Fury. He cannot do it.
He was practicing and training.
It's like, these people, they say, oh, with Deontay Wilder, he needed to throw that Larry Holmes jab. He does not have a Larry Holmes jab. Once again, it would be like George Foreman trying to out-jab Muhammad Ali or trying to out-jab Larry Holmes. It ain't going to happen. You can try to train him to do that at the end of the day, but why the hell would you try to train him to do that? It would be like if you're a quarterback all in all and you're trying to train Drew Brees or Tom Brady, who do have talented arms, to try to make the same type of throws as an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. That's great that they can make those type of throws, but if you know that you can't always make the type of throws that they can make the smartest plays available. Do what you're best at, and that's what my point is. Deontay Wilder, he knew overall what he was best at, and so did his corner. So it is what it is.
Disappears. I remember...
as a good boxing coach, you cannot always train fighters to fight in a certain way. Of course, you're going to have to train them to be as multidimensional as possible. But what you're really going to have to train your student to do is to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And for Deontay Wilder, he cannot fight on the back foot. He just cannot. So he needed to learn how to hide that right hand. He needed to learn overall how to jab to the body. And he needed to pressure Tyson Fury a little bit more. But like I said, we were going to see if Deontay Wilder talking all that shit about, oh, how Tyson Fury has no power. We were going to see how real he was with that. And just like I predicted, he was not. He knew that Tyson Fury could punch. And as soon as Tyson Fury came at him in the second round, he started backing up.
After the first fight, Deontay Wilder, he admitted, he said, look, man, we be working on everything. Me and Mark, he be telling me to do all of these things. He said, but for some reason, once we get deep into the fight, sometimes a lot of that stuff goes all out of the window and I just want to knock him out. So he admitted that he has problems following the game plan. It's hard for him to stay focused for 12 whole rounds. So that tells me that it wouldn't have mattered who would have trained him, and that's probably why Deontay Wilder said, man, I'm just going to have my close friend do it. Because at the end of the day, it's up to me if I'm going to follow instructions. It's up to me.
Well, I think Deontay Wilder, I think that he wanted to adjust, but he did not want the help of Floyd Mayweather Jr. Like I said, some people, man, just for like a figurative example, some people, like trying to come up with the saying here, some people would rather starve to death than take a cheeseburger or take a piece of food from you or take, a $5 bill from you to get a piece of food just so they could say that they did not receive help from anyone else and that they got through their hardships all on their own. And I understand that mindset to a degree, but, unfortunately for Deontay Wilder, do I think that was a part of his downfall? Yes, I do.
If I'm going to do what we've been working on in training. And Deontay Wilder, he wasn't able to do it. And it's so unfortunate for Deontay Wilder because Tyson Fury looked extremely flawed and vulnerable in this fight. But
yes, he did. Like I said, I don't think Tyson Fury was 100% here.
Unfortunately for Wilder, he was even more vulnerable and flawed than Tyson Fury. And that was the difference. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
That's really about it for me too. But I just thought that would be interesting because, a certain amount of people, they may ask that. And they may ask me, well, do you think had he trained with Floyd Mayweather Jr. that he would have beat Tyson Fury? No, personally, I do not. Even though Floyd, I think, is a great fighter, and I think all in all that he seems to be an okay trainer, Deontay Wilder is just one of those guys that is always going to be very, very limited. I don't see him ever beating someone like a Tyson Fury. We'll even see if he can beat someone like an Anthony Joshua or an Andrew Ruiz. I think it's very possible that he could possibly defeat those guys, but we'll see what happens. It'll be very, very interesting. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.